institution in the world. It's a theocracy. It has an Islamic revolution. It has a religious government. There's no such thing as a religious government. That's kind of like the Spanish Inquisition. So I think we have a religious institution in the world called Iran. I think that Iran is not so much economically developed or powerful as Saudi Arabia. I think Saudi Arabia could be more economically powerful in the world because it produces a lot of oil in the world. So it has a very economic power in the world. I think Iran does nothing in the world. It has no military capacity. It has no economic capacity. It has no population capacity. It has no industrial capacity. I think Iran is pretty much nothing. I think if you look at Iran, it's dominated by Britain, France, and America. So I think it is dominated by those countries. So I think Iran is very inefficient in the world. I think that it likes to presume itself as masculine or strong or supreme in the world. So it kind of engages in the world because it seems to feel itself to be quite strong in the world, yet it seems to be quite weak in the world. So I think that's how Iran behaves in the world. I think that if you look at the Middle East, we have a strong composition of the Middle East as maybe a power block of Europe. But I think if you look at Iran, it's kind of offset and isolated from the rest of the developed world and perhaps the rest of the global world. So I think Iran is pretty much deceased as a country. I have disfavourable opinions about Iran because I believe they conduct aristocratic Islam with Shiism. I think they like to think themselves as aristocrats. I think that's kind of degrading for people. I think that Iran kind of eats ham sandwiches as well. I think it likes to do that as well. Yeah, I believe it does. I believe it does do that as well. I don't believe they're Muslim. I believe they've kind of been make-upped as Muslim. But I think that we shouldn't have Iran in the world because we have things like the Iranian embassy siege in Great Britain in 1980. We have terrorism, global terrorism. We have kind of like economic interference and an economic interest and violation. So I think Iran in the world creates conditions of kind of a Muslim interest in the world. It creates violence and terrorism in the world. I think Iran in the world is very contagious in the world. We seem to have issues like Iran, China, and Taiwan, and various other perhaps deceased countries and isolated countries in the world. I think for there to be a strong Iran in the world is to be a condition of concern because it could cause problems. Iran isn't engaged in the world, so I think that's why it could cause problems. And I think that Iran is very heavily involved in the Middle East. I don't think Iran should be involved in the Middle East. I think the Middle East is primarily the Middle East. But for there to be a presence of Iran in the Middle East is kind of creating some kind of a religious inquisition kind of condition in the world. Is kind of creating retribution for the beliefs of religion. It could be creating the Muslim Brotherhood. It could be doing something with Wahhabism and Catholicism and Protestants as well in Europe. It could be doing something with Buddhism in China. It could be doing a lot of religious belief in the world. And I think that we do have a serious concern in the world. I think that if you look at how stable the world was maybe a decade ago, without Iran involved in the world, we had quite a stable Middle East without a military presence of Iran. But I think if you look at the military incursion of Iran in the Middle East, it has created a very unstable Middle East, and I believe this has affected the global economic conditions. It's affected things like global political relations, maybe Saudi Arabian oil, American oil in the world. It's kind of perhaps decapitated the industrial economy of the world. It's kind of introduced Iranian oil. If you look at the oil in the world, it's all Iranian now. It was American before. It seems to be all Iranian before. It's all Iranian now. If you look at, I think it was American oil before. It seems to be Iranian oil now. So I think that's quite concerning because it's producing conditions like electric cars in the world, like social media, like Coca-Cola in China, like tobacco in China. It's doing conditions like that. I think we should have American oil in the world. However, I think we have Iranian oil in the world, and it's very unusual, but I think that most of the world oil is 90% Iranian now. So I think that's quite concerning. It could be some kind of economic terrorism on a very large scale. So I think we do have a lot of Iranian oil in the world, and it's created economic instability, and it could also be creating conditions like COVID, disease and influenza. It could be creating instability, political instability, with maybe soft, weak, conservative governments in the world. So I think that we do have Iran in the world, and that could be creating conditions of weakness in the world. Thank you very much. Thank you.